My name is Lucian Trent, and at my sister's wedding, her father-in-law looked straight past me like I didn't even exist. He brushed by without a nod, without a glance. Just that air of quiet dismissal that men like him have spent a lifetime perfecting. I stood there in a tailored suit, drinking hand, knowing something he didn't. See, Roland Rowe, the man so proud of his last name, he probably signs it in gold ink, had spent the last 6 months trying to buy out a tech company. He didn't realize I co-founded a company. His own business relied on a company I built, from nothing while raising my sister from the ashes of our old life. But Roland only saw what he wanted to see, a nameless, titleless nobody. He saw the surface. That's what men like him do. And frankly, I was fine with that, because in a few minutes after I got called up for an impromptu speech, I would introduce myself. And when I did, everything about the way he looked at me would change. His posture, his expression, his grip on the wine glass. Some people don't like surprises. Roland. He turned pale. And I just smiled. They say the hardest part of loss is the silence that follows. That's true. But no one tells you about the noise that comes before it. The ring of a phone at an hour. It should never ring. The static in your ears when someone says the words you swore you'd never hear. For me, it was the sound of my college advisor saying, "Lucienne, there's been an accident." My father was gone. Just like that. One moment he was planning a trip to visit me and my younger sister Isolda. The next I was driving back to a hometown that already felt foreign without him in it. I was 22 and exhausted from finals. Isolda was 17, 1 week shy of her high school graduation. We had no mother in the picture. She'd left years ago to reinvent herself with a new family. So it was just us. 2 orphans, 1 car, and a future that had just crumbled overnight. The funeral was a blur. What came after was brutal clarity. Debt. So much debt. My father had been self-employed, and somewhere along the way, things must have spiraled. Loans missed payments, business liens. He must have been trying to protect us from it, shielding us until the very end. But once the obituary printed, the creditors came knocking hard. They took everything. The house, the car, his workshop. All we had left was the small suitcase of clothes I'd packed for spring break. My scholarship covered tuition, but rent, groceries. Isolda's tuition, we were on our own. That night, after the last relative left and the door clicked shut, I remember sitting on the floor with Isolda. She was crying, knees tucked under her hoodie, and I realized no one else is coming. I was the only adult left in her world. So I made a decision. I would finish school, get a job, any job, and keep us above water. I took on work in the campus cafe, picked up evening shifts as a courier, and slept maybe 4 hours a night. There were days when I went to class, still sweating from hauling boxes, up 4 flights of stairs. But every dollar I earned stretched across 2 mouths, 2 lives. I lost my girlfriend somewhere along the way. She was kind, but she needed more than voicemail apologies and forgotten date nights. I let her go, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't have enough of myself left to give. People talk about building character like it's some polished process. Mine was forged in overdraft fees and bus transfers. It was built when I looked at my little sister and knew she still deserved a future, even if I had to burn mine to light the path. After graduation, I didn't celebrate. There was no cap toss, no party photos, just a quiet sigh and a job offer at a mid-sized firm doing back-end operations. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid, and that was enough. I moved us into a modest 1-bedroom apartment. Isolda took the bedroom. I took the couch. She started community college while I juggled spreadsheets and client calls. Every night I cooked us dinner, even if dinner was just rice and eggs. And on weekends I caught up on sleep and broken shifts. But even in that grind, I kept one eye on the future. I enrolled in online courses, marketing automation systems, SaaS platforms, anything that could sharpen my skills. I didn't know what opportunity would come, but I swore I'd be ready when it did. It came one rainy Thursday evening. I got a message from Felix Marin, an old classmate who remembered my business instincts. He and another friend were building a tech tool for automating back-end systems. He needed someone who could handle operations and pitch to early clients. I was hesitant. It sounded unstable, but it also sounded alive, and I hadn't felt alive in years. So I said yes. My life split in two. From 8 to 5, I wore slacks and answered to middle managers. From 7 p. Mate. To 4. I lived in code bases, flowcharts, and pitch decks with Felix. We built out of coffee shops and borrowed server space. Some nights I passed out with my laptop still glowing on my chest. Money was tight. Arguments happened. One of our co-founders left after a brutal 6-month dry spell. Felix and I stayed barely. Then came the breakthrough. A corporate client piloted our tool and slashed their processing time by 40%. They told 3 others. Suddenly we had demos booked inboxes, flooded, and feedback loops we barely had time to process. A review on a major tech blog gave us our first real wave of inbound interest. But even then, I didn't quit my day job. I'd learned too early how fragile stability could be. I saved every spare cent. I handled customer service tickets, invoicing and system bugs in between lunch breaks and late nights. Felix became the public face. He worked, smiled at cameras, gave TEDx talks. I was the man behind the curtain. And I liked it that way because while others chased titles and LinkedIn clout, I chased something else. Peace of mind. A life where Isolda didn't have to count every dollar at the grocery store. A life where her future wasn't defined by what we lost. She got into a state university on merit. I paid every bill on time. We had backup savings, health insurance, working appliances. That felt like luxury. No one saw how much it took, and I didn't need them to. But that silence, the choice to stay unseen, meant people like Roland Rowe could meet me and assume I was small. And that was fine by me because I'd rather be underestimated than misjudged. I'd rather be invisible than falsely praised. But life has a way of bringing things full circle, especially when your sister decides to get married. It was a Tuesday night when his old called. I had just collapsed onto the couch, still in my work clothes, eating cold leftover pasta straight from the container. She sounded breathless, excited, but also strangely hesitant. "Lucien," she said, "I have something to tell you." I assumed it was about school, maybe a project or an internship. I didn't expect her next words. "I'm getting married." My fork paused in midair. "You're what?" "To Damien," she said quickly, like ripping off a bandage. "We've been seeing each other seriously for a while now, but I didn't tell you because I didn't know how." I blinked. I'd met a Damien once in passing, but I'd never heard her mention anything serious. "Isolda, I married." "That's huge. Are you okay?" She laughed nervously. "I'm more than okay. I'm happy. I just needed to tell you before things moved further. He wants to meet you." That caught my attention. Anyone who wanted to marry my sister had better want to meet me. I was her brother, yes, but more than that, I was the one who stayed. I'd played every role in her life that mattered. Parent, tutor, emergency contact friend. If someone wanted to step in now, I needed to look him in the eye and measure the shape of his soul. We arranged to meet that Friday, just a casual dinner, nothing formal. I offered to cook. I still remember opening the door and seeing Damien standing there, flowers in one hand, a bottle of wine in the other, and a grin that tried a little too hard. Something about him felt familiar. We exchanged pleasantries, sat down, and talked. He was polite, well-spoken, clearly adored my sister, but there was something in his last name that tugged at me. Rowe, I said aloud, turning it over in my head like a coin. Any relation to Roland Rowe? He paused for a fraction of a second too long. He's my father. That's when it clicked. Roland Rowe was one of our biggest enterprise clients. Not just that he'd been actively trying to acquire our platform for months. His emails always came laced with thinly veiled offers, the kind that suggested he thought he was doing us a favor by showing interest. He was a businessman through and through. Sharp suits, sharper tone, and a reputation for crushing partnerships just to own the scraps. He was all over the industry blogs. He wasn't evil, just dismissive, transactional. And now here I was sitting across the table from his son. I kept my face neutral, my tone even. I didn't mention the company didn't bring up business at all. This was about Isolda. If Damien was decent, I'd find a way to make peace with the rest. Later that night, Isolda pulled me aside in the kitchen. You went quiet for a while there. Everything okay? I nodded. I'm just surprised. You really love him. I do, she said. He's not like his father, Lucian. He's kind, steady. He listens. I studied her face. She wasn't pleading. She was glowing. And she never glowed easily. Okay, I said at last. Then I'm in your corner. Weeks passed. Wedding planning took over her life. I offered to help where I could, but kept my distance from the formalities until the family meet and greet. It was held at an upscale country club, all white tablecloths and waitstaff in black vests. Isolda asked me to attend, and I said yes more for her than for them. I met Roland face to face that day. The moment I walked into the room, his eyes found me. He took me in quickly, shoe-suit posture before looking away. When we were formally introduced, he offered a limp handshake and said, "Oh, you're just her brother." I assumed her father would be here. I stared at him. Our father passed away a long time ago. He gave the briefest nod of acknowledgement before moving on. Then came the inevitable question. What is it that you do again? There it was, that investor instinct sniffing out pedigree. I work corporate, I said. True in a sense. He didn't hide his disinterest. Didn't even try. And that was fine. I didn't come to impress him. But part of me, a small part, I usually kept buried. Whispered, "You'll regret that." I told Felix about the encounter later that night. He just laughed and said, "The universe has a weird sense of humor." The weeks flew by and soon the wedding day arrived. Isolda looked radiant, the kind of beauty that didn't just come from the dress or the makeup. It came from knowing you were loved and loving back without fear. She gripped my hand before walking down the aisle and whispered, "Thank you for everything." I just smiled. At the reception, I stayed out of the spotlight, chatting quietly with guests. Then I saw Roland approach with 2 other men. He walked past me again, didn't even pause. It was deliberate, calculated, and I felt nothing. Nothing but quiet certainty. He still didn't know who I was. Not really, but he was about to find out. I wasn't planning to speak. There was no note in the program, no cue for a brother of the bride speech. I'd already played my role. Walked Isolda down the aisle, stood tall in family photos, raised my glass during toasts. That was enough. I didn't need the spotlight. But someone must have added my name to the speaker list. A member of the catering staff tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're next." 2 minutes. I blinked. Next for what? She gestured toward the stage. Speech. The mic's ready. I could have declined. Should have, maybe. But something in me, Some mix of fatigue, pride, and memory told me not to. This was my sister's wedding. The closest thing I had to a daughter was entering a new life, and the room still didn't know who I was. So I stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked to the front of the room. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady. "My name is Lucian Trent. I'm Solda's brother." That caught their attention. I continued. "But I wasn't just her brother growing up. After our father passed unexpectedly, I became her guardian. I was 22. She was 17. We had no other family. Our mother had long since moved on. The room shifted. Glasses were lowered. Forks paused. I was finishing college when it happened, and I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not when she needed food, a roof, tuition. So I worked day shifts, night shifts, weekends. I slept less than I'd like to admit. I lost friends. I lost someone I loved. I glanced at Isolda. She was already crying. "But we made it," I said softly. "She made it because she's brilliant and brave and has a heart that forgave me for the moments I wasn't enough." A quiet rustle moved through the crowd. Even Roland across the room had turned to face me. I also want to say this, I added my voice lifting just a bit. During those years while trying to survive, I helped build a startup, a software platform. Some of you may even use it. That line landed harder than I expected. I saw heads tilt. A few guests exchanged glances. My co-founder Felix over there joined me on a leap of faith. We started with borrowed code and busted laptops. Now we support some of the biggest firms in the country. I let that hang in the air. And while I didn't come here to talk business, I share it because it's part of the story. The same story that led me to this room, this day, this moment. I turned toward Isolda and Damien. "I'm proud of you, both of you. You found something rare. Trust, partnership, joy, and I'm honored to stand here and say you're ready." With that, I stepped away from the mic, nodded at the applauding room, and made my way back to my table, but I didn't get far. Roland Rowe intercepted me like a shadow emerging from the wall. He extended his hand, smile tight. Lucian wasn't it. That was quite a speech. I shook his hand, firm but not eager. "Thank you. You're the co-founder of Ye?" I nodded. "Yes, that company you've been trying to acquire." His smile faltered just a fraction. I had no idea, he admitted. "Why didn't you say anything when we met?" I held his gaze. "Because I wanted you to see who I was when you thought I was nobody." He didn't reply. "Didn't need to." I gave him a polite smile. "Enjoy the evening, Mr. Rowe." Then I walked past him back to Felix, who raised an eyebrow but said nothing. We clinked glasses. The tension dissolved. The rest of the night, smooth, joyful. Isolda danced like a woman free of old shadows. Damien was gracious. Roland stayed civil, but something in his eyes had changed. Less arrogance, more calculation. That was fine because I hadn't said anything untrue, and I hadn't said everything either. We never sold the company to Roland Rowe. Not out of spite. Not even because of how he treated me. Truth is, the offers were impressive on paper. But I've learned to look beyond numbers. His interest wasn't built on mutual respect. It was built on the assumption that everything and everyone has a price. And I don't do business with men who only learn your worth after they read your resume. So Felix and I stayed independent. We scaled with purpose. We didn't need a buyout. We needed space to grow on our terms. Ironically, Rowe Industries still licenses our platform. His employees file support tickets through the same portal as everyone else. We respond quickly, professionally, always polite, never personal, strictly business. Damien never brought it up. He respects boundaries, and more importantly, he respects Isolda. Over time, we've built something close to trust. I don't hold his last name against him. He is not his father. He never was. Isolda is thriving. She has peace in her life now. Real peace. She teaches gardens volunteers on weekends. And she smiles in a way she didn't when we were younger, when everything felt like it might fall apart any second. That smile is what I fought for. That's the return on my investment. Sometimes people still assume I'm just the guy in the background. Quiet, unremarkable, and I let them think that because I know the truth, the ones who dismiss you when you're silent are the same ones who will scramble to respect you once someone announces your title. But by then, their respect means nothing. True respect shows up when no one's watching. It's not a reaction. It's a choice. Roland's biggest mistake wasn't underestimating me. It was assuming that being unseen meant being unimportant. But I've never needed the spotlight. All I needed was to know that my sister would be okay. And now she is. That's more than enough for me. If there's one thing this whole journey has taught me, it's this. You don't rise by being loud, by forcing people to see you. You rise by standing firm in who you are, quietly, steadily, and with dignity. When people finally notice, let it be on your terms, not theirs. Because at the end of the day, what matters most isn't who applauds you. It's who you protected while no one was watching.